I'll keep my intro very brief. I think many of you will already be familiar with Manisha. I know that with the tragic death of Prakriti Lamsal at KIIT, which was a big issue here. I think that Newslaundry's coverage of that event, I think, already got Manisha to the attention of a lot of people in Nepal who might not already have been familiar with Newslaundry. So I think a lot of you probably already know her and know the kind of work and the kind of journalism that she stands for. But I do want to put both Manisha and Newslaundry into maybe a little bit of context. Until quite recently, I was living in Delhi, and from my living room, you could see across into the neighbors' living rooms. This is how Delhi is, everyone's packed together. And I could see about 4 or 5 windows, a lot of them with big screen TVs. And on any given evening, you would see on one TV screen, you would see Sudhir Chaudhary. On another one, you would see Arnab Goswami, and other journalists who, if you ask me, might not be worth the term. But then on one screen, you would also see, and I'm not talking about a small laptop screen, I'm talking about a giant flat screen TV. You would see Newslaundry Hafta with Manisha. and I think that goes to understand that. I think, Newslaundry is a scrappy startup that is now, I think, maybe exiting that phase. All the Sudhir Chaudharys of the world have in crores and crores and crores of money behind them, and the TV channels where they work to do, frankly, propaganda work. And for Newslaundry, in even a small way, to put up a challenge to that, I think is absolutely remarkable. And I think that that's really the context that we need to keep in mind in terms of both where Manisha is coming from and also the organization that she represents is coming from. Their slogan, which has been drilled into my head, and I'm sure Manisha will work on drilling into yours, is pay to keep news free. And it's a simple thing to say, but it's a minor miracle because they have convinced a lot of people, in the tens of thousands from what I understand, to pay to keep news free. They are paying so that others can continue receiving and consuming high quality news and information. It's an extremely difficult thing to convince people to do. It's even more difficult, I think, in the context of India and South Asia. And I think that Newslaundry very much is a pioneer in this because I think since 2012 they've been at it, right, if I'm not mistaken. And they are now, I think, fair to say, the only completely reader-driven and reader-supported news organization in India, which is absolutely amazing. And Manisha is their managing editor. I want to very briefly also thank or I think acknowledge the people who are not in the room, Abhinandan, Chitranshu. There are other very key people. I think Manisha is, of course, the face of it, and deservedly so. But there are also other key people who have made this miracle happen, if I can say that. As to how they did it, I will leave you in Manisha's hands to walk you through that story and hopefully also inspire and share some lessons for us in the Nepali media, because I hope that it's only a matter of time before we have our own Newslaundry. Manisha Pande.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me here. It's a real honor and I'm really excited to talk to you about, like Kunda said, we know all the challenges. Every journalism conference starts with दुखड़ा. क्या challenges हैं हमारे सामने? बहुत से challenges हैं. Increasingly, there are very few public spirited people who want to invest in news, right? That's the first problem that journalists face. पैसा किसने डालना है न्यूज़ में, किसी ने नहीं डालना है. The second thing that I find it very, and I don't know if that's true in Nepal, but talent, young people, young blood. When I go to journalism colleges in India at least, I ask, a hall full of students, how many of you want to be journalists? No hands up. How many of you want to be content creators? How many of you want to be influencers? So people want to be content creators, they want to be influencers, they want to go to PR, they want to do ad, journalism. Young people feel too dangerous, not worth it, no money. So there's that problem of talent. And of course, there's the problem of attention span. As a journalist today on Instagram, I am competing with Taimur Ali Khan, I'm competing with Kim Kardashian. I'm competing with the latest Korean skincare fad. Somewhere in the middle of all of this, I have to tell people about something that's important to them, something that's in public interest. So those are the challenges, and we cry about them a lot, but I want to talk to you guys about the good news. What we have experienced in Newslaundry since 2012, where we feel that this is possibly the most exciting time to be a journalist. And thanks to internet, the same internet we blame for trolling or for lack of attention spans, I think it has been deeply empowering for journalists in Newslaundry to have a YouTube, have an Instagram, have a Twitter that can help us reach out and challenge legacy media. Just a little context, जिन लोगों को Newslaundry के बारे में नहीं पता होगा, we started in 2012. नाम है हमारा Newslaundry, मतलब न्यूज़ की धुलाई. So our tag used to be, taking news to the cleaners. We used to have shows like Dhobi Ghat, where the idea was कि न्यूज़ और जर्नलिस्ट सबसे सवाल पूछते हैं. We ask questions of politicians, we ask questions of bureaucrats, sports people. These days in popular Indian television news, we ask questions of students, of farmers, of all our neighbors, of Nepal, of Pakistan, of Bangladesh. So we ask questions of everyone, but there's no one to ask questions of the media. Who will question the media? Who will talk about the issues within the media? I started my career in 2009 with a business daily, Business Standard, based in Delhi. This was the time of slowdown. Layoffs हो रहे थे मीडिया में बहुत सारे. और एज ए यंग जर्नलिस्ट मुझे खुद लगता था कि हमारी प्रॉब्लम्स के बारे में कोई बात नहीं करता. हम लोग बोल रहे हैं आईटी सेक्टर में इतना ले ऑफ हुआ है. These are the challenges various sectors face, but no one's talking about what journalists are going through, what the industry is going through. And at that time, I used to follow Newslaundry. Soon, by 2014, I joined them because it was very clear to me in mainstream news that there's shrinking space. Already we were getting directions कि आपको कैसे report करना है, किसके favor में report करना है. And I joined Newslaundry 2014, and we quickly grew into understanding that critiquing news is fine. We talk about the ad model, we talk about propaganda, we talk about business interests, corporate interests taking over public interest. But it's also important to do good journalism, and that's how we'll be able to actually make a difference. So it's not enough to just critique. It's also important to get down and do the job that we think should be done. And how we thought about doing that is, at that point, internet or digital news was all about opinions, right? Everyone should have an opinion. One website will have one opinion, or उसी का counter बिल्कुल 360 degree, 180 degree U-turn एक और opinion. So you can gain as many views as you can, right? You rage bait, you say something alarming, you say something that can get people angry, and that was the understanding that a digital media, model should be. You get content and you get people engaged, you get them happy or you get them angry or you get them excited purely through opinions. And we decided that we are going to go back to ground reporting. That is the basis that's the very spine or the very, that's the essential work that a journalist should do, is to hit the ground and bring out clarity as much as we can. Truth is a lofty word, so I don't like to use that. I think even today, what people really look for when a big event happens is clarity. And I think journalists are best poised to do it because we are trained to do it. And that's very important. I think we lose sight of the fact with influencers and everything. We think that, okay, it's all about views, it's all about opinions. But increasingly, a lot of people crave clarity when something big happens. Journalists with their training in fairness, in reaching out to all sides, with our training to be balanced, we are best poised to deliver clarity in a world where we are bombarded with views. And we started with our focus on the fact that we have to hit the ground and bring clarity on any issue. Because we critique the news, we realized कि problem हमारी एक लाइन होती थी कि लोग बुरे नहीं होते, हालात बुरे होते हैं. So it is not that journalists are bad, but they're made to operate in an environment which doesn't put public interest in the focus, and that's because they have to rely on advertisements. So आपको सरकार से ऐड आ रहे हैं, आप पलट के उनसे जवाब नहीं पूछ सकते हैं. आपको किसी कॉर्पोरेशन से एड्स आ रहे हैं, आप पलट के उसी कॉर्पोरेट पे एक इन्वेस्टिगेटिव स्टोरी नहीं कर सकते हैं. The model is flawed. Journalists are expected to do public interest news while the public doesn't even pay for it. If your governments are paying for it, if your corporations are paying for it, it's going to be impossible for people, journalists especially, to continue to keep public interest at heart. So we decided we're going to go completely ad-free. We will reject government advertisements. We will reject corporate advertisements. We even reject Google advertisements. We don't need the Google ads. Our YouTube is completely ad-free. We don't have any ads on our website. It's completely clutter-free. And 2020, we celebrated 10 years of that experiment. We were able to do this, survive, sustain, and grow, and celebrated our 10 years. And I just want to show you a little video from our 10-year celebration. If we can just play the first video that I sent. So that's 10 years of NL. That's all our team. The idea
Communist Newslaundry, you can only eat shit, which you do the best. What a coincidence. I have shit in my name.
न्यूज़लॉन्ड्री में बसंत की बहार आती रहे. मोर पावर टू द एंटायर टीम. अपना सहयोग बनाए रखें. बसंत की बहार आती रहेगी.
Newslaundry, the shittiest channel. So original. That's why we have like 1 million YouTube subscribers and thousands of paying subscribers, right?
This is a Newslaundry appreciation tweet. You people are just amazing. No, you're amazing.
Beggars believe you guys are still going. And why am I the only who sometimes comments on your tweets? Because you got no life, bro.
Couldn't think of any better way to spend my stipend. Thank you Newslaundry team for amazing work that you do and for demonstrating that subscription-based news model in India is sustainable. उम्मीद है आपका stipend जल्द ही सैलरी में बदल जाए.
Newslaundry, why are you becoming a PR for Naxals? What the f***? There is terribly wrong with your journalism ethos. F***ing Naxal sympathizer. Wait, are we liberandos, Khan market gangs, Aptats, Naxals? एक decide कर लो यार.
I have a very small question. Why do we not hear more from Jude? OMG, that voice is meant for the mic, guys. I listened to his voice in the Best of Awful and Awesome Part 4 last week. I wish there is a Part 5, 6, 7 ad infinitum. I mean, what a wow. Well, my number is 79760. Forget it. Forget it.
Newslaundry has completed 10 years this year. We have been around for a decade. Initially, people were skeptical when we told them that we are going to run an organization, news organization without advertisements. But we are still here and we are growing, and that's all thanks to you, our subscribers, our supporters who pay to keep news free so that independent media can survive and we can do public interest journalism. So thank you. Let's hope we survive for another 10 years or maybe 100. All you need to do is to support us. Pay to keep news free.
So that's us asking for pay to keep news free. So like I was saying, one of the ways in which we decided that we're going to be different if we're going to go down the non-ad route is to focus on ground reports. We felt that there's too much of opinion, too much of noise, too much of hangama on every issue, lack of clarity, and ground reports are the best way to bring you clarity. The other thing that I think journalists are forgetting to do, and I think it's very important for all of us to drive home that point, is advocacy around journalism. We think advocacy is a bad role, activism is like a bad word. But at Newslaundry, what we've really tried to do is tell people that journalism is expensive, right? When a ground reporter goes on the ground, they need money to eat food, stay in a hotel, cover their basic transport. News gathering essentially is an expensive endeavor. सस्ते में नहीं होता है. और अगर आप लोग पैसे नहीं देंगे तो गवर्नमेंट और कॉर्पोरेशन पैसा देगा, फिर हम वही न्यूज़ दिखाएंगे जो उनको दिखाना है. So since 2012, we've made a lot of effort to tell people that journalism is expensive. Often reporters go on the ground, they spend money, they may come back without a story, right? It's also not a sure shot, you can't look at it in a sure shot business sort of a way that you're going to put X amount of money and you're going to get Y amount of returns. There is uncertainty, unpredictability to it. But we need to communicate to people that in a democracy, journalism and access to clear, correct information is like access to clean water. it is what allows people to make sensible electoral choices. We are not here to tell you which party to vote for, but we want to give you all the information you need to decide how to use your vote. And that is something that we keep driving. It's a big part of our philosophy to tell people that information, correct information, journalistic endeavors, public interest news is possibly the most important thing in an electoral democracy. It's a cliche to say fourth pillar, and we keep saying it, but I think it's more and more important to tell people that it really, it will define all the difference that there is between an autocracy and a democracy. Your access, regular person's access to credible information, and which is why we don't put anything behind the paywall. A lot of our stories actually, especially stories which are investigative in nature or which have public interest information, will not be behind the paywall because we believe that everyone should have access to it. I'll give you one example of a recent investigation that we did. Kumbh Mela hua. It was celebrated, I think possibly had the biggest PR push ever. A lot of people were called. There was a lot of government advertising that went into it. In fact, अगर आप कोई भी TV channel India में open करेंगे तो during the Kumbh Mela, half an hour के ads चलते थे UP government से. So a lot of government advertisement went into pushing Kumbh Mela. A lot of media organizations, I think, made a lot of money in that time because from newspapers to television news, government pumped in crores of rupees into making sure that Kumbh is the grand success that they could talk about. Somewhere within a few days, it turned out that the arrangements there weren't up to mark. The management wasn't really what it should have been. There were complaints coming from the ground कि इतना advertisement हुआ, इतना PR हुआ, लेकिन यहाँ पे बहुत दिक्कतें हो रही हैं. And then there was a stampede, quite a deadly stampede. The government took about 18 hours to come up with a figure on how many people had died. Officially, they said 37 people, and that's it. All the channels and newspapers that were getting government ads on Kumbh just swallowed that figure. And within 8 hours of people losing their lives in the most gory, in the most horrific way, anchors were on news channels saying, कोई बात नहीं, बड़े बड़े देशों में छोटी छोटी बातें होती हैं. आप देखिए अब कितना यहाँ पे अच्छा माहौल है, कितना जश्न का माहौल है, कितने श्रद्धालु आ रहे हैं. Let's forget about the dead. We sent our reporter there, and within a week we were able to find that the number could be close to 80 people. The government is not telling the truth. So you had entire media with the money, the resources, and truly the manpower on ground to bring the truth out. They were silent. And here we were, one reporter, one iPhone, goes and gets an exclusive that none of these big channels, big reporters were able to get. Because our brief to the reporter is clear: bring the truth out, bring a clarity on the number of people who've died. You don't have to worry about upsetting a chief minister. You don't have to worry about upsetting a government because we don't owe them anything. We're not running on their money. So our brief to our reporters is always, you go, do the best you can, practice what traditional journalists should practice: fairness, balance, reaching all sides, corroboration, investigation. Make sure that what we put out we can back by facts. It should not be hearsay. And come back with truth and clarity on an issue. That's all the brief we give our reporters. And it's truly empowering for young people to go into the ground and not worry कि मेरी report से कौन सा ad बंद हो जाएगा, मेरी report से क्या phone आएगा मेरे editor को, then editor will call me कि तुमने ऐसे क्यों करा, वैसे क्यों करा. So our endeavor with all our reporters is really that they go out, they keep public interest at the center of the issue, and they bring the report out. So we put out our Kumbh report, and I think now almost 2 months ago, I think BBC came out with an investigation that pretty much said what we were saying, that at least 80 people have died. The government has refused to acknowledge that. The government has refused to put an official number to that. But that's the power of what independent media can do. It can go and really bring clarity on an issue that no one wants to bring you clarity on. The story was outside the paywall because we thought it was too important to be put behind the paywall. But along with that, we told our audiences that, look, it's because you guys support us. It's because your money is keeping us alive that our allegiance is to you. So if you want more of that, you have to think about why you need to, pay for stuff that talks about what you guys care about. India is still a poor country. Much of South Asia is. Poor people have information needs too. We recognize that not everyone can pay, and which is why, like I said, we don't put things behind the paywall, because we feel हर कोई पैसे नहीं दे सकता है न्यूज़ एक्सेस करने के लिए, और ये फेयर भी नहीं है इंडिया जैसी कंट्री में वेर यू नीड इन्फॉर्मेशन आउट देयर. बट इनफ लोग पे कर सकते हैं, इनफ लोग पैसा डाल सकते हैं टू मेक श्योर कि एक ऐसा एंटरप्राइज चले which can challenge the narrative, which can go out and put the ground reporting back into journalism. And that's what our model has shown, that we don't need everyone that we reach out to. We have 1 million subscribers, not everyone pays. Often young students, we say don't pay. It's your time to enjoy free stuff. So we give them free subscriptions and say, you should not be paying till you make your money, till you get your first job, but with your first salary, remember us and remember to pay. Remember what contribution that we have had. And it's really worked for us. People get it. But with a lot of advocacy around the idea that, if you're not going to do it, then a big government will do it, a big corporation will do it, and they're not going to care about your interests. The other thing that we've seen, I know that this is something that really troubles journalists, propaganda, how in India at least it's not just on the internet or on WhatsApp, but television news has become a big source of propaganda in India. हर रात हमको बताया जाता है कि कैसे जो मुसलमान हैं वो लव जिहाद कर रहे हैं, लैंड जिहाद कर रहे हैं. वो आपके खाने में actual prime time news anchors come and say that they are spitting in your food. So be careful of what you eat in a Muslim hotel or a hotel owned by Muslims, or where there's a waiter who's Muslim. There are bizarre theories like video game jihad. This is my favorite. This is actual news on prime time. कि वीडियो गेम के थ्रू आपके बच्चों को मुस्लिम्स टारगेट कर रहे हैं. सो डोंट प्ले फोर्टनाइट बिकॉज देयर यू मे फाइंड अ मुस्लिम हु इज प्लेइंग विद योर किड एंड दे विल कन्वर्ट यू. Love jihad, of course, is the theory that, Muslim men can lure women, get them to convert because it's so simple to just lure any woman. So this is what we see on television news nightly in India, at least the loudest channels. जब आपको ये नहीं डराया जा रहा है कि आपके बगल में क्या हो रहा है, या आपकी ज़मीन कैसे कोई और लेके जा रहा है, या इलीगली लोग इमिग्रेंट्स आ रहे हैं और आपके स्कूलों में भर रहे हैं और आपके नेबरहुड में भर रहे हैं, जब आपको ये सब नहीं बताया जा रहा है, then the target is students, these intellectuals who think too much, who think they know too much, these anti-nationals who they're questioning all the time, these pesky people who have too many questions of the government. Why should you be questioning the government at any point? So students are the next target. Anyone who decides to protest. All protests can be linked to some plot, either in the US or in China or in Pakistan. So all protests are demonized, that these guys are not true Indians. They are here because they are here to destabilize national interest. So every night on the news, your anchor tells you that be suspicious of any protest, and that's not something that you should be doing in public interest. And when you're done with Muslims, students, when you're done with protests, there's the opposition. So we've had one government for the past 10 years, लेकिन सारी गलती नेहरू की है, सारी गलती opposition की है जो power में ही नहीं है for 10 years, but everything wrong in India that's happening is because of the opposition. So you've actually demonized opposition, where today a large section of Indians, when you ask them about their problems, the roads, the schools, the state of jobs, some of them may at least say, oh, but well, look at the opposition. There's no understanding that the government in power is responsible for, what is happening with your life. So in such a situation where you have mainstream media really working as a propaganda arm of the government, the good news is what we've realized over the past 5 years or so at least, that people recognize propaganda when they see it because it doesn't match with their daily realities. If you're sitting at your home and you have 2 sons, they are jobless, पेपर लीक हुआ है, पेपर लीक की वजह से उनको एक साल वेस्ट हो गया है, and they turn on the nightly news and they have an anchor saying everything is great, we're Vishwa Guru, everyone loves us, and we are going to be like the next big thing. People recognize that, okay, that's not the reality of my life. And I found that in Lok Sabha elections, at least, when we would meet people on the ground, even BJP supporters or people who support the government would say it's a bit too much. We don't feel like hum Vishwa Guru hain. We don't feel like all our problems have gone. And in such a scenario where mainstream media has forgotten to serve or talk about issues, no matter who you support, the bad road outside your house is a problem. The garbage disposal is your problem. The fact that your sons or your daughters are unemployed is a problem. In that scenario, I think a lot of people are turning towards alternate media. They are looking at YouTube. They are looking at different sources that can tell them stuff that matches their lived reality. So when a Newslaundry comes and we do a series on paper leaks or corruption in examinations, even someone who's a die-hard fan of the government will say, thank you for covering that. This is the problem we are facing. Thank you for talking about it. So don't lose, I think it's very easy to sometimes get drowned by propaganda or feel that we've lost the battle or feel like there's just too much of, you're being bombarded day and night by propaganda and there's no way to get out of it. Don't underestimate the power of what good public interest journalism can do, because people, thankfully, luckily for now, they do recognize their own realities, and they do recognize that irrespective of who we vote for, at least from the media, we expect that our problems are highlighted. And that's, again, a little bit of advocacy on part of journalists. We at Newslaundry constantly say that, look, you vote for who you want to, you support who you want to, but this problem of corruption in exams, these are the people responsible. These are the people you need to look at and ask questions of. Or that these problems exist and we need to, Vishwaguru ko bolne se kuch nahi hoga, ye problem solve karni padengi. So while we do our reporting, we also make sure that there's an element of advocacy in what we're doing. We're constantly telling people that these problems media should be talking about. It's not enough to just praise an elected leader. It's not enough to just be a nationalist and say we are the greatest. It's important to talk about problems so that we can solve them and actually at some point be a Vishwaguru. I'm not going to take too much time. And I've given you a brief of what we do, and I'm hopefully leaving you guys with a sense of optimism around journalism as a profession. Because I truly believe that while there are lots of problems that we are facing, there is an audience today hungry for information like never before. There is an audience today confused by all the information around them like never before. In this scenario, I think if we use the tools that we have, like different ways of communicating on the internet, using YouTubes, using social media to repackage traditional journalism. The idea is that we still do the same thing. The tools are still traditional, like they were, but we're just repackaging it in a way that's more digestible for an audience that can watch us. We're very conscious that we're never talking down to our audience. We're always talking with them. We don't put ourselves up there कि हम बड़े अच्छे हैं, हम ऐसा सब कुछ ठीक है, बाकी सब चोर हैं. We actively encourage people to criticize us, to tell us where we went wrong, to tell us what do you feel we missed? Do you think that there's a story that we are not paying attention to? So when Manipur happened, the ethnic strife almost 2 years ago, a situation of civil war almost broke out, and the media was pretty much ignoring it for almost a month. And that's when our own subscribers, our own followers would say, why don't you guys go there? We trust you to bring us clarity on an issue. And we'd like you guys to hit the ground and tell us, and we'll support that. And so we had a reporting fund which allowed us to place 3 journalists, a producer, 2 reporters, in Manipur for almost 20 days to bring us stories completely funded by people, because they believed in us and they believed that we'd go there and not take sides and bring as much clarity as possible. And I'm again emphasizing on clarity because that's really something that people crave today, and I think journalists are best poised to give it. We're trained to do it. We just need to believe in that, and we need to figure out newer ways of communicating with our audience and re-engaging with our audience, and internet allows that like never before, right? No one has to write a letter to the editor, dear editor, blah, 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 blah. The editor will vet it. It's instant, like we were seeing in that video of ours. The hate is instant, but even the like is instant. Even the appreciation is instant. So ignore the haters. Take a cue from your critics who want you to do better, who believe, who have who are engaging with you in good faith. That why have you ignored Manipur for 1 month? You claim to be independent, you claim to be alternate. Where's the Manipur story on your website? Engage with that. and have faith that that will have resonance among people. I wanted to just end this with a little musical we made when we were celebrating our 10th anniversary. And by the way, congratulations to Nepal Times for the 25 years. It's remarkable. And I hope we hit 25 years at some point. So just a little musical we made celebrating our 10 years, and then maybe we can get in a conversation. I'd love to hear from you guys.
Why can't you stand up for 50 years? Why can't you? नरेंद्र मोदी को कई बार याद किया गया। आपको जाना चाहिए। पहले भी आपके सामने हाजिर हो चुका हूँ।
Imagine no advertisements supporting news with strings. Sarkari jingles funded by PR feature type things. Imagine there's no shrieking or screaming every night. Just some good old info without the hue and cry. Imagine all the anchors giving us just the news. Imagine there's no master, you on a leash so tight, free to speak the truth, no fear of mortifying. Imagine stating the facts, not getting penalized. You may say I'm a dreamer, but it's not just me. I hope someday you will join us, and the news will be free.
The main thought that kind of sticks with me from what you said, right? I mean, you said news ki dhulai, that's where it started out, and in keeping with the Nepali lesson, so you can be reassured how close Nepali is to Hindi. समाचारको धुलाई हाम्रो नेपालमा समाचारको धुलाई गर्ने त्यति बानी चाहिँ छैन, and so we don't really have that kind of tradition in the media. And I know that in the Indian media as well, for a very long time, and even now, there was an omerta, a code of silence, that the media will not criticize the media. I've been involved in project stories where we stepped past that line, let's say on NDTV and their compromised finances long before Adani came through. And the kind of anger and hatred we got from fellow journalists who would otherwise support us for doing bold investigations on governments, corporations, whatever, it was initially quite shocking. I think that in the Nepali media, I can see some faces here who are already maybe starting to push that boundary. But I think that that code of silence is still very much in place. We have had Ravi Lamithane maybe going a little bit too far on this and not doing it in a, let's say, professional journalistic way. I'll fill you in on that story another time. But in a professional journalistic way, the criticism of the media, right, and which is where you guys started out, I wanted to ask you to maybe speak a little bit more about that in terms of how that went for you, why you guys felt the need to do it, and what kinds of reactions you got. And I'm not talking just about reactions from other journalists, just in terms of, you know, how your users, your audience engaged with it, and also in the big picture, what effect you think that has had on the media landscape generally in India.
Yeah, so like I said, I became a journalist in 2009, and as a journalist, while I was not with Newslaundry, and I worked in two papers, Business Standard and DNA, as a young reporter, I really wanted, I felt that there was an important need to be talking about the media, what journalists were going through, what reporters were going through. Like I said, that was a time of slowdown, so there were layoffs. And I felt that there's not enough being done when it comes to talking about the media. Back then, there was the Hoot in India, and there was Newslaundry, two organizations that did it. I joined Newslaundry in 2014, and I started off as a reporter. And initially, I think for the first 5 years, I was reporting on the media. So we would look at propaganda, we would look at conflict of interest, why a particular story has been dropped from a newspaper, and why is the other newspaper putting it on the front page, what are the sort of business implications to a particular report. And the pushback was strong. I would often, like every journalist should do, in every story you reach out to everyone. So every time I'd call an editor for their quote, they'd just bang the phone on me and say, what is it to you? Who do you think you are? Why should we be telling you what's happening within our newsrooms? Who are you even? So we'd had really rude, and some of them now really love us, appreciate our work. But back then, 10 years ago, it was just audacious. And editors, especially newsroom leaders, just thought that this was just ridiculous, that somebody can call us up and ask us what's happening in our newsroom. Why did we drop a story? Why did we pull down a story without giving an explanation? We don't owe it to anyone. And I think what happened was, because we put the spotlight on it, increasingly people realized that it was important for them, our audience, our viewers realized that it was important for them to understand why a particular news is played up or why it's killed in a newsroom. There's one story that I love to tell. It was about, there was a crime story in Delhi. A pizza delivery boy had harassed a girl, sexually assaulted a lady. And that story was not played up in one of the more prominent Delhi newspapers. And we wondered why that was, because it was splashed in the other newspapers, because it's the sort of crime story that you'll see on a city page. And then we figured that the pizza delivery company is run by a head company which is related to the newspaper. It's a franchise. So the other work that this newspaper did was have this franchise. And that's why the news was buried, because the pizza delivery company had links to the newspaper. So several such stories, people would wonder why a story is played up or killed. And I think we had the answers, at least we were trying to find the answers. We did a lot of advocacy around the fact that you demand clarity of all all enterprises in terms of funding. So journalists and journalistic organizations also have to be up for that scrutiny. Who are your funders really? Which business people have invested in you? And not to kind of pull you down with it, but just in the interest of transparency. We at Newslaundry very clearly state that. So I think there was a pushback within the newsrooms in the beginning. But as there's sort of interest among the crowd, and I think it's also inevitable in the age of internet, right? Like the legacy of newspapers or editors sitting up somewhere and people not being able to question them, that model had to go with the internet. Like I said, the reactions are so quick, the feedback is so quick, and people are questioning more and more on the internet. So just like politicians or actors or sports stars have to be kind of available to questions, I think media, it was only a matter of time that the media also had to kind of, be answerable for their coverage. So that changed, I think, especially 2016 onwards, because I think what happened 2016 onwards in India is also that with the JNU sedition case, where students really became the villain for a lot of our news channels, people started feeling the impact of a rigged media. A lot of people started feeling victims of the media or a media trial. And in that sort of a scenario, there was more and more hunger among people to kind of put the spotlight on why an anchor was saying what they were saying, or why a journalist was pursuing a story that they were saying. And it became kind of inevitable. Now I think we're at a point where a lot of other organizations in India are covering the media, at least the business aspect of it. Most people are doing that, including major newspapers. More and more people have to be open to being questioned about everything from business to editorial decisions. So I see that change a lot, thanks to the internet. So Yeah, but I think along with that, there's also now an increasing need for us to also do a bit of media literacy, because with the, it's good to question your media, but there are also now actors that will just spin any conspiracy around, like BBC is funded by George Soros, and that's why they are doing the story against the government. So I think there's the opposite of that happening now. So I think there's also need to now kind of explain to people, what relief funding is, what is an editorial decision, who makes the decisions in a newspaper.
Thank you for that. I think, and maybe a second question to just build on some of the things you were saying. You were talking about going to journalism schools or media schools, and influencer, yes, content creator, yes, journalist, not so much. I think that maybe somewhere along the way, I think this is true for all of us maybe, but I think especially for young people, I think we are starting to lose any kind of clarity or a shared definition of what a journalist actually is, right? Because you can be a content creator in a lot of things that young people would be like, oh, I want to be a content creator. Some of that could be journalism, some of it might not be. And of course, those lines are now trickier to navigate than ever before. But a conversation I've been having with a lot of journalists, because I think it's important for us to reflect on this in kind of the present context. What is a journalist in today's day and age? What's the core of it from your experience? What are the things that have to be at the center? What are the things we need to really hold on to?
Yeah, I know. And so I think the core is news gathering at its very base, and getting information from the ground. Everything will possibly be replaced by AI, or like you said, a content creator can probably explain an Air India crash or the report better than a traditional journalist can. But the access to that report, the access to what has happened on the ground, going and meeting not just victims who died in the crash, but people who were there on ground in that medical school that was hit. So I think at the core, that is going to be very hard for anything to be, for anyone to replace. So news gathering, hitting the ground, going and seeing for yourself what the truth is. That's essentially what reporting is supposed to do. And I think that, to me, I think we can really clearly say that that's a role within journalism that's not going to change. I do think on internet, if you look at journalism as something that just caters to your information needs, then content creator is also a journalist, any sort of explanatory kind of a YouTube channel, and there are lots now in India who at least sometimes do a better job than journalists in explaining issues. So I don't scoff down at them. I do think that there's something that journalists need to learn from them. But so all those people, if it's just about servicing your information needs, then there's lots of stuff on the internet that can do that. But I think at the heart of it, hitting the ground, telling you what's happened, and having a fair mind while doing it, which we are trained to do, right? We're not going to just write something because one person said it. We're going to go triangulate it. So when you see something on a newspaper on the front page or on Newslaundry, you can be sure that we took a piece of information and we checked it. We really went and made an effort to make sure that it's correct. And that's when we published it. So I think that job of a journalist, I think that's what defines us. But I think more and more journalists need to kind of talk about that. We need to explain to people what makes a news story. I think we're assuming that people just know this, or that we don't need to explain our work. I think more and more today, we need to explain to people what a reporter does, what an editor does, what does a desk do, why is something that is published, trustworthy, and how is it different from a content creator who's put something out. If we start explaining the ways in which we function, I think more and more people will see value in what we do.
Absolutely. I think the old saying that always sticks with me is a newsroom is a place where information is verified, right? That's the core of it, perhaps. We'll open up to questions now. The mic is there, please. Anybody, please, if you can just walk up to the mic and share your question from there.
Hello, namaste. I'm Rudra. I'm an investigative journalist. Just I wanted to note that there are some sites they have started to talk about media in Nepal as well, like mysansar.com, Media Kurakani, and it's in public and people have started to comment on it. on them as well, but they have so far brought out what the newspaper has published. One newspaper in the front, on the front page, the same, and the another has put it in the back page, like that. And people like some credible people who are mostly trusted among the public also have followed the same way, but we need the kind of media that Newslaundry is doing, definitely. And to Manisha, I have a small query that when you make mistakes, like have some, you realize that you need to correct it. What's the guideline you follow, and what's the procedures you go through so that people you serve can better trust you?
Yeah, so that's a very important question. And in fact, when we started Newslaundry, a lot of our reporting on the media would be that a story has vanished. You know, some story on some corporation has just vanished. It was there and now they've pulled it down. Or some speech by some politician that was controversial, it was reported on, but now it's vanished. So a lot of those errors, what is it? Is it 303 error? What is it called? Like there's a, yeah, 404. So the 404 error was like a standard story we would do, where is it gone? And we would call the editors what happened, and they just bang the phone on us like, we don't need to tell you what happened to it. But that's one lesson that we really learned early on. If you make a mistake, apologize for it, write an update, say we got this wrong and we're correcting it. We have never pulled down a story in Newslaundry, rarely. I think there's just 2 or 3 stories that we've pulled down, and even when you go on that page, it says the story has been pulled down because we found it to be completely untrue or whatever. We explain why we did that. So that's a big element in which we were able to kind of build confidence in people, that even when we go wrong, we're not ashamed to say sorry. We try and not go wrong, and it doesn't mean that we're wrong every day and we just say sorry and it's okay. It's important, the onus of putting something up there and making sure that it's correct is still very high. But whenever we typically receive, somebody reaches out and says, hey, that's what you've got wrong, we will have an editor look into it. We would verify at our end that did we really get it wrong. We'll check with the reporter, and we would correct it immediately with an apology note and an update that things have not just magically changed in this article. We've made an addition and a clarification because this is what we found we did wrong. And that's very important for journalists to do. At the same time, we don't that also allows us to not cower down when we're right. We are not easily intimidated by legal notices or court cases when we're right. So a lot of organizations will just pull down a piece because they got a notice. But we're very clear that if we're right, we're going to stand by it and we're going to take it till the end and fight it. But if we're wrong, there's just no harm in saying sorry.
You want to take a question or share a question as well?
Yeah, one comment and a question. One is, I think the time will come when there'll be so many influencers in this world that they can't influence each other, and the day of journalism will come back. That is probably the way it'll go in the end. In the end, but for now, we are in the day of the influencer. My question is, in Nepal, we believe ultimately it is Nepali language media that will bring about change in behavior of the state, of society, whatever. So, since North India, according to me, is the problem child of India and South Asia, and where Hindi or Hindustani should be the language of discussion, the very name of Newslaundry is in English, and in English in a way that it may not be exactly immediately resonate with a Hindi language audience. So have you overcome that? You started at Newslaundry and you stayed with it, obviously because you've overcome that little blockage you may have had through the name. My question to you.
First I just want to put up a defense for North India. I think it's become, just because a certain party has been in power in Uttar Pradesh, or, I think when people say North India, it's usually Uttar Pradesh that they're mentioning as. It doesn't mean that people are making electoral decisions without thinking. I think there's a lot of... when I go traveling for elections, the most fascinating place for me has been Eastern UP. I think people there are smarter than most journalists. They'll sit and give you gyan and teach you. You know, they'll tell you politics. And so I think there's a lot of young people in Uttar Pradesh. I mean, they're just smarter than many places. They know what a vote means. They know what their vote can get. They know all the details of their booth, what their Vidhayak has done, what their Sansad has done, and they happily lecture you on it. It's also the state that gave us a Dalit chief minister, so we shouldn't forget some of the very progressive things that North has, you know, given us, just because there are certain electoral choices, and there's a sense to, but that's a different conversation altogether. But on your question on Newslaundry, yes, as a 10 years ago when I would travel in Varanasi, they'd be like, New Laundry? ये क्या नाम है? Laundry? ये क्या नाम है? And, you know, when they look at often when you call the true caller, will say dry cleaner or something. So, so a lot of people would kind of be like, what is this stupid name? And Newslaundry was my absolute favorite because he was just really puzzled, like, what is this? But we have a Hindi channel now. उसको हमने बहुत जैसे न्यूज़ की धुलाई, खबरों की धुलाई. So we've tried to like explain that in a way with our taglines. Our Hindi channel is actually growing exponentially. I, as a journalist, must tell you that my formative years were in English language while I was writing in English. And I wasn't reaching out half the people that I reach out today because I do programs in Hindi. I'll go to some village, even in West Bengal or Uttar Pradesh. They would have seen some aspects of what I've done because of YouTube or because it's popped up on their mobile. So the reach of video and Hindi is remarkable. And I think that's a real cause of concern for the government too. Because we've been able to reach out to people that we wouldn't have been able to reach out with our English language journalism. Now with our Hindi shows, we're able to kind of, it's unimaginable where, it's very satisfying also as a journalist that, wow, I have been able to reach out to someone who would never come on my website. They'd never read an article by me. But because I'm on YouTube and I'm talking in Hindi, she's seen me, she's seen a reel, and that penetration has really happened well for us. Hindi language is really growing, even in terms of newspaper. Hindi newspapers continue to grow. YouTube channels continue to grow in Hindi. And I think that it's really remarkable in a way that you can have real change in terms of even getting people to think about politics. So what we have done is, the English name, I think now is no longer an issue because people get it. We use a lot of like fun words, taglines. We're always coming up with promos explaining what we do. We're routinely doing our own advertisements. We are ad-free, but Newslaundry makes sure that our own advertisement we're doing every month. So innovative ways of telling people what we do. So we've been able to do that in Hindi, and I think the name no longer is an issue for us.
Unfortunately, I think I'm getting a signal that we are out of time. I'm sorry. I hope you can just come up to the stage and ask your question and we can keep the conversation going. I think we have to keep the program moving. Thank you to all of you for coming out this morning and for joining us for this session. I will hand it back with a vote of thanks, please, for Manisha Pande once more. I will hand it back to Kummeji.